Task Force Void Nova Hammer. Most of the guards I knew were just dying to see them in action. I was the odd one out in that regard. They were here now, and those guards were too dead to see him. Sorry, that really was a distasteful joke. I guess Adrian's presence has rubbed off on me just a tiny bit. Speaking of Adrian, he was feverishly fumbling around in his pockets while keeping his eyes glued on the monitor. After a few moments, he tossed a bag of white powder onto the table. "Astro Coke?" I asked. He shook his head. "Nah, just the regular stuff. The show's not at its climax yet. Gotta pace myself." He snorted the whole mound in about half a minute. "Yo!" he grunted, wiping his nose off. "You fellas want to hear a secret?" I don't think we had a choice. Task Force. Void Nova. Whatever. How do you think the members get recruited? I shrugged. Dunno, some kind of test, I guess. He guffawed. "Nah, they're voids as well." My mouth dropped. As he went on to explain, the TFVNH was a constantly rotating team comprised of voids, save for a few exceptions, who were a reasonable balance of both powerful and sane. In fact, different countries occasionally lent their own voids to one another to use for their respective forces. In exchange for their services, the members would be allowed to live freely amongst society, although they were monitored heavily while doing so. "You sure know a lot of confidential stuff," Sandu said to Adrian. "Just who the hell are you?" Adrian sat back in his seat. Nobody. Just a dabbler. A jack of all trades. Master of a good handful." He sure was insufferable. In any case, I put my sights back on the monitors. As Bella struggled against the seemingly unsurmountable foe, she tried blasting him with a blade spray, but before she could even raise her hand, it was broken with a single firm grasp. She spat, the life draining from her breath with every word. As Adrian would go on to tell us, this particular TFVNH member was Kente, the Guillotine Sanders. 6'6" and 287 pounds. Supposedly, he was a real hard-ass, an abnormally powerful man with an incredibly skewed and strict sense of justice. To him, the word nuance meant nothing. Rehabilitation was a joke. Second chances were an alien concept. He was a man whose worldview was utterly black and white. To him, the laws that landed him in prison didn't constitute legitimate justice. His ideals were the only ones that mattered. Cross his sensibilities, and you were a criminal in desperate need of execution. "He's got a pretty notorious reputation in these parts," Adrian continued. "He's captured at least 7 of the voids in here himself. Nearly killed all of them as well. Honestly, I'm not rooting for him to win. It's gonna be too hard to wrangle in afterwards." Just as Bella looked about ready to pass out, Kente was blindsided by a sudden rush from Luz. Well, I guess blindsided wasn't really the right term. Kente blocked his strike with relative ease. "There's revenge customer numero uno," Adrian said. "The big guy wiped out Luz's entire village before dragging him into this place. No wonder he's pissed." For the first time, Luz had a fierce expression on his face. He let out a rage-laden shriek before digging both of his hands into the only exposed part of Kente's body, his neck, lightening up the area and his face with sparks. "Oh boy, that ain't gonna work," Adrian muttered, grinning. Kente grunted, seemingly taking the full brunt of the excessive shock without going down, before grabbing both of Luz's arms and slamming him onto the floor. He dropped Bella in the process, who immediately ran off with her life. Adrian clicked his tongue in disdain. "It's not even gonna help him. Guess that's women for you." Sandu and I kind of just glanced at each other awkwardly following the comment. Unfortunately, Luz's rage just wasn't enough for him to fulfill his revenge. While still on the ground, Kente stomped on his head, crushing it like a watermelon. Quite the gruesome sight to behold. Afterwards, he set his sight on Wu, who'd been observing the whole exchange. "Finally," Adrian said. "The strong are going at it." For a moment, Wu and Kente both seemed to acknowledge each other's power, hesitating for just a moment, and then, in a flash, they rushed each other simultaneously. Both of their opening moves were kicks, catching each other's respective legs mid-air, causing the walkway beneath them to crack underneath their combined pressure. On top of possessing overwhelming strength, they were both apparently skilled in martial arts as well. A terrifying combination, but Wu possessed another more devastating aspect on top of all of it. actual weapons. Wu dropped his leg, opting to blast Kente with a flurry of shotgun rounds instead. It was enough to send him flying backwards, breaking apart the torso section of his suit. And he didn't give him a second to breathe. Wu rushed forward immediately after, grabbing Kente's helmet and slamming it down on his knee, shattering it completely. He attempted to decapitate him on the spot with a saw, but Kente caught the slash before it could land. He looked up at Wu, his dark eyes twisted with rage. He broke the saw in half before delivering a powerful-looking right cross to Wu's stomach that splintered a portion of his suit and sent him crashing into the rails. He managed to crack the damn thing, I thought, astonished at the fact. That meant, at a minimum, Kente's punches packed more stopping power than a M203 grenade. Ooh, he's getting serious, Adrian smiled. You know what they call his striking technique? What? The pulverizing fist. He twists his knuckles at the last moment, grinding the flesh to a pulp. With his strength, it's like drilling through wet toilet paper, but that's only for regular people. Doesn't work on big boys like Wu. The armor covering Kente's knuckles was shattered upon the impact. He winced in pain as he cocked it back, preparing to deliver another strike. "You're an impediment to justice," he said through gritted teeth. "Prepare to be executed." But before the two could clash again, 5 more figures jumped down from the hole that Satanbot had created, landing in succession around Kente. "Looks like the whole gang's arrived," Adrian said. He began giving us a rundown of the other TFVNH members. First off, there was Ken, the fugitive Rio. 6'2", 165 pounds. A Korean-American from Brooklyn. Not a super malicious guy. He kinda just did whatever the hell he wanted. Problem is, a lot of those things happen to be illegal, and unethical, let's be honest. He was nonchalantly chewing tobacco as he leaned on the rails. His ability was rather interesting. Even Adrian had a hard time explaining it. Physically speaking, Ken was more or less average. However, he had the ability to summon portals from which obscure-looking but terribly powerful entities would emerge and tear apart his opponents. But at the end of the day, all that he really wanted to do was escape. He hated being monitored. Next, there was Nassar, the Bloody Twister, 5'9", 168 pounds. He was a loan from the Saudi Arabian government. He possessed the ability to transform into a whirlwind comprised of glass-like material, moving at speeds upwards of 120 miles per hour, along with being able to blast out deadly streams of shards at multiple targets at once. It's quite the gruesome way to go out. He was also a really weird guy, and while nearly every other void assigned to TFVNH had relatively clear ambitions, his were an absolute mystery. But he probably wasn't up to anything good. His eyes were darting wildly around while a gigantic, mischievous-looking grin was plastered across his face. Next up, there was Callista, the beautiful demon Taylor, 5'11" and 121 pounds. She was a former fashion model based in Australia. Her career ended at the ripe age of 23, when she ended up suddenly murdering 4 of her fellow models, along with the police force sent to detain her. Supposedly, her abilities had been latent from her birth, gradually building up to a point where she was unable to keep it any longer. In her demon mode, her mouth would fall abnormally agape. Dark rings would form around her pupils and her body. Her body would be engulfed in gray, cold flames. At that point, she'd become intangible like a ghost and drift into her victims' bodies, causing them to bleed profusely from every orifice. But that only worked on humans. For most voids, she'd have to resort to physical brawling, using her razor-like fingers. Her ambitions were fairly explicit. She just wanted to kill everybody, void or not. It begged the question as to why they'd even assigned her to a task force to begin with, given the fact that she was so damn volatile. Whatever. I never understand these people. She was staring intently at Nassar, but without any real emotion behind her gaze. Kinda just looked like she wanted to kill him for the sake of it. Continuing on, there was Clint, the normal guy Rockwell, 6'1", 180 pounds. Like Nassar, he was also a mystery. Supposedly, he'd never been a void at all. No otherworldly powers or abilities, just a regular, albeit capable guy. Adrian didn't know much about him, only that he was a special case, granted access to confidential information and a spot on the TFVNH due to a recommendation from an unnamed higher-up. In order to compensate for his lack of physical ability, he was granted an oversized power suit dubbed the Behemoth, along with the god-slaying cannon, a heavy-duty automatic rifle that fired explosive rounds at 600 RPM. He stood still with a rather determined expression on his face, as if he had his mind set on a singular, concrete objective. Rounding out the bunch was the de facto leader of the force, Jack the All-American Barnes, 6'0" and 200 pounds. Like Clint, he wasn't a void either. Born in Oklahoma and belonging to a prolific family, he was an inexhaustibly skilled soldier turned government agent that managed to work his way up to the top with the help of some nepotism. Eventually, he was chosen as the inaugural subject of a project dubbed the Paragon Trials, in which government scientists would attempt to genetically engineer superhumans. Well, he wasn't actually the first, but that's what he was told. Peace of mind. In any case, his trials ended up working out in the end. I guess the 8th time really was the charm. As a result, he was basically Superman, save for the flight. Genetic engineering hadn't advanced that far yet. "Man, look at those blonde curls," Adrian commented. "How the fuck does he get his hair like that?" He had an arrogant grin on his face as he strolled to the front of the pack. It only took me 5 seconds of looking at him to reach the conclusion that he was probably a giant asshole. "What's the rush, Kente? Let's not get too excited here," Jack said. "Remember who's giving the orders, yeah?" "Your arbitrary orders mean nothing to me," Kente responded, still staring at Wu. "The only thing that matters is justice." He could see a large vein bulge out on Jack's forehead from the opposition. "Okay," he muttered before seemingly composing himself. "Let's finish the task at hand." He directed his gaze towards Wu. "Come on, big guy. You lost your chance at a fair fight when you decided to become a robot psycho." While Wu may have been a match for Kente by himself, taking the entirety of the TFVNH at once was a rather tall order. I guess he knew this himself as he jumped over the rails, landing on the lower floor. "I'm going after him," Jack said, stepping forward. "The rest of you, take out the riffraff. They want the voids alive, but I'm going to be sorely disappointed if you don't bring me back some fucking minced meat." That was one thing him and Kente could agree on. "And remember," he said, turning back, his expression suddenly teeming with fury, "you're all scumfuck piece of shit voids as well. You try to escape, try to fuck with me, and you're gonna be begging me to end your pathetic fucking lives." He pointed at Ken. "You stay here. Make sure nobody tries to escape through the roof." Instead of acknowledging the order, Ken just spat his tobacco into a plastic bottle. "Hey, you listening to me? Remember when we beat you in the fucking war?" "Isn't he Korean?" Clint muttered. Ken just raised an eyebrow at the remark. Dude, I don't even know how to respond to that. "Look, whatever. Just fucking listen to me, alright?" Jack screamed. Ken grinned sarcastically and made a defensive gesture. "Okay, boss." Jack's forehead vein bulged out even more. He was really starting to look pretty gross. "Alright. Let's fucking go, then!" After finishing his motivational speech, he jumped down, presumably going after Wu. Save for Ken, the rest of the TFVNH followed suit, scattering throughout the chasm in search of the remaining voids. The strong were finally about to converge in one bloody path. As dark, weird, and gruesome as the whole situation was, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't at least a little bit excited to see what was about to transpire. Hey there kids, it's me, MrCreepyPasta, and as always, I want to tell you thank you so much for watching tonight's video. We're entering into the summer, which means for me, I have horrible allergies, and that means for you, you might not, but hey, I'm going to tell you about this anyway. My wife has a tea shop. It's called etsy.com/shop/ivorymonocletea. If you go down into the description, you'll find a link over to it, and hey, there's actually a whole bunch of new teas there available to help you with things like allergies. They've been a hell of a help for me. And if you've been watching me record live on Twitch, then you'll see that I'm not sniffling, at least not as much. And as always, I want to give a very big thank you to everybody who is on my Patreon. That means everybody. Everyone who is from the $1 tier all the way up to the, God, why do you pledge that much tier? But I especially want to give a big thank you to Jordan Alexander Sanchez, Stephanie Butler, Bobby Karman, Tristain Pelton, Chance Burnett, Diana Kraus, Kyle Reznak, Happy Birthday Ollie Whale, David Martin, Scare-ington, the Unkempt, Angelus, Spanky, Snootchie bootchies, Autistic Spidey, Fruddy, Seclude, Lupita Galvan, That Creepy Chick, Tyler Fletcher, Rebecca Harper, Merxinum, Red Shadow Cat, Xavier the Cheyenne, Demyx, Shawn Cadieu-baker, 6 Gay Rats in a Trenchcoat, Turtleman, Rob Likes Sharp Things, Chaos Arts, Cryolinium, Zachary Gruffius, Lord Life's Best, Goreng Trimagacy, Maria Walker, Pain Gravy, Crazy Kid, Mr. Marcus Blitz, Aka Limchok, Dirt Diver 030, Matt Bach, Naughty Devil, Voice of Sands, Coffee Zombie, Matthew McNeese, Shelly J, Jeremy H, Reltazol, Ficomel, Nana, Deleted Account, Melted Lake, Tali Sue, William King, Darth Miver, Michael Ortiz, Satanic Aries, Nessie, Bardo Hawk 764, Lambda M98, Harley, Sashi Suzaku, Croconut 509, Kaylee Ambrose, Suji Campbell, Stricken, Freddy Krueger, Nicholas Zicardi, Happy Birthday Jason Wilson, Lisa Cottrell, Caspian, Hades Nephew, Tater Chip, Acid System, Prozac and Pancake Appreciation Society, Benjamin Welvart, Kiri the Sloth, Fester's Lampshade, Sky Harbor, Nico Kyle, Rafael Rodriguez, The Ginger Bros, Aaron Stormcrow, Daniel Polson, and Corey Kenshin. As always, you guys are the MVPs. Everybody who's on that list, everybody who's on that Patreon, everybody who's in the description, thank you so much. And if you'd like to join this list of names that I horribly mispronounce, head over to patreon.com/MrCreepyPasta. And as always, everyone, sweet dreams.